All right, we are live for another Travel Tip Tuesday here on my page, The Traveling Lucie. And today's guest is Deanna Troy with Deanna Troy Travels, and I'm super excited to have her on today. She has traveled Asia and Southeast Asia all over for 2 years. And it was really cool to hear her story and find her and meet her and just hear all of that she has to offer. So we're going to talk about how to travel in Southeast Asia today. And I'm really excited to delve into it. If you guys are just tuning in for the first time, my name is Lucie, the Traveling Lucie, aka. And I host this every week, and I'm always excited to hear from these other creators and these other travelers and hear what they have to say, because they've seen more than I have. Like, I've seen a lot, but there's always more people out there that have seen more, right? So to get you guys' perspective is always awesome. So thank you so much, Deanna, for coming on today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. This is such a great podcast that you do with having all these travel people. So thank you very much. And
no, of course. No. And I mean, with so much changing nowadays, especially like why I started this, like with COVID and everything, so many people are like itching to travel now. Like they want to get out there. They want to like see the world now that they've been stuck in their homes for so long. They're like even more so wanting to get out there. So it's really cool to be able to bring people on and show them what it's like in these other places that maybe they never even had on their radar before. So
yeah, I feel like for Americans, since you're from Florida and I'm from Massachusetts, there's not a lot of Americans that travel, and that's not a thing here. It's way more popular with the European countries, the German country and the British, and they all are all over the place. They're traveling all the time, and not Americans. So I think that with COVID and being all trapped inside, everyone's, as you said, itching to go out and learning that life can be different than the usual 9 to 5. And learning about all these other options and being more interested. So
absolutely. Yeah. And that's been really my goal too, is like to help reach out to young Americans too, because there's just so much to see out there. And I think that really the biggest piece that is missing is the fact that nobody knows where to start. They don't know where to start. So giving them that little piece, like, okay, this is where you start. Like, this is how you get over there. This is how you are when you're over there. Like, it's just, that's the little piece or the little fire that they need to get out there and get going. So I think I think it helps expand the whole horizon of anybody who takes travel. But we'll get a little bit more into that later. I do want to, start off with, who are you? Tell us about you and how you started traveling in the first place. How did you end up on this 2-year adventure throughout Southeast Asia?
Well, thank you. Yes. So I'm Deanna Troy Travels. I traveled for 2 years from 2016 to 2018. And how we kind of got started, my fiance and I, traveling, is we went on a couple little trips together before. Like, we went to Ecuador for a wedding. We went to Cancun just for a vacation. And those little trips kind of made us get the travel bug and want to go for longer. And then in Ecuador, we actually met backpackers and we learned all about that. And later on, we were kind of done with our kind of like wanting a career change, a little life change. And my fiance asked if we wanted to go backpacking, like those Ecuadorian kids that we met. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. This is pretty crazy. So we made it work. We saved, and, we got little side gigs and everything to take with us. And then we just packed our bags and got on a plane. And as you said, with getting started, one way that it eased our minds, but also our parents' minds, is that one of my best friends from home got a teaching job in Thailand. So our first leg of our trip was all 3 of us going on the plane and then flying over together. Yes. So nice. He kind of already knew the layout and had an apartment and showed us around, and we got a little safety net to give us our little boost and to start us off. So
that's nice. Yeah, that's definitely nice.
Yeah. And that's and you said yes. So who else am I? I have a YouTube channel, called Deanna Troy Travels, and I've been doing that since the middle of my trip in 2017. So I have a lot of footage of Malaysia and Philippines and Indonesia, and I use that in my pictures and a blog and Instagram and everything to kind of, show my trip and show how other people can travel, and it's not as hard as it seems or wild as it seems, and you're gonna be fine. You're not gonna get abducted or drown in the Malaysian Sea or anything. It's just it's so regular, and there's so many other travelers out there to mingle with while you're there. So
it's so true. Oh my gosh. I can't, and I think what's really cool is that you have done a lot of Southeast Asia and I've done a lot of Europe, but like I've gotten that so much. And I feel like probably there's a little bit more fear when it comes to Southeast Asia. But even with Europe, like being, that Europe is, I guess, the next destination that people think of when they are thinking international. But so many people, when I went on my Europe trip, they were like, oh my gosh, like, don't get taken. I'm like, you're watching too much TV. Like, I told them that I was staying in hostels, and they're like, oh my gosh, the movie Hostel. Like, oh my, I can't even.
I know, yeah, because a lot of those movies that are about fear of traveling do take place in Europe. So
yeah, but and the thing is there's like obviously it's Hollywood, so they're trying to make it like more than what it is, and so people take that as like the real deal thing, and then that's not what it is.
Yeah.
So, it is funny. So was that your first time in Asia when you were over there, or was that
yeah, that was my our first. Well, I also in college I did a 2-week study abroad history course in Venice and Rome, and that was kind of like my first international experience. But for Asia, that was my first time going over there, and then we stayed for 2 years, so we liked it.
That's awesome. That really, it's so cool. But I feel like you took such a big jump too. Like some people are like, oh, like I'll do a week or two, or maybe a month, maybe two. And like you guys planned originally on a year, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we planned on, I mean, we took the little trips as I told you to get our little feet wet. And then we were like, all right, we're going to go for a year. And everyone was like, what? Are you sure? And I mean, it seemed impossible to even go for a year. And then we stayed for another year because we liked it so much. So
happens quite often, just extending those trips when it's so good.
I feel like it's a lot of, you can, for money purposes, if you're going to spend all that money to fly over there, might as well stay for a while to get your money's worth.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Is there a reason that you specifically chose like over there, or was that kind of the catalyst because your friend was going to Taiwan, or was that always the goal to go to Asia?
Well, we were actually going to also go to South America, but that ended up not happening because we just were wanting to kind of like do a little slower travel in Asia. So we were like, okay, maybe not South America, but we did pick Southeast Asia for the prices of stay and accommodation, and we were kind of looking for the most budget friendly places, and those were the 2 most budget friendly places that we researched. So that's where we did.
So you said that you had stayed with your friend in Taiwan for
in Thailand.
Thailand. Sorry,
okay.
My bad. In Thailand, and then so how long were you there? Like, where did you stay after that? Did you kind of just like get little apartments here and there? Were you like how was the travel? Like, where were you staying?
Well, yeah, a lot of the times we did stay with either friends or we used couch surfing to stay with people. So we stayed for about a month in our friend's apartment. But while we were there, we took little side trips to different places in Thailand. And then we went right from Thailand to Vietnam, and we stayed with another friend that, a British friend that my fiancé met on another trip that he took. And all these people were very nice to let us stay at their houses. So then we stayed in Vietnam at that place for about a month and traveled around Vietnam. And then after that, we kind of more were doing hostels, and we only really did couch surfing in the bigger places, the cities that were bigger.
So there's so much that I want to unpack there. So like, one, you brought up a good point that like these people were so nice to like let you stay in their places. But like I have noticed that when you travel and you meet other people when traveling, like they're so willing, like people from all these other countries. Like I have friends all over the world now because of the trips that I've done. and like I have friends in Greece and in Germany and in New Zealand. I didn't meet him in New Zealand, but he lives in New Zealand. You know what I mean? So it's like I could go to all these places and they'd be willing to have me there. But it's like that connection that you make when traveling. It's like so cool that that becomes a thing. Like they become friends to where you can go visit them and stay with them.
Yeah, definitely. That kind of happened again. The other two people we knew before the trip, but we met someone on the trip and he was living in Singapore. So we stayed in his apartment in Singapore for a week. Yeah. So, and we just met him in Laos and we got along. And then he said, "Oh, if you're in Singapore, then you can stay at my place." So we said, "Okay."
There you go. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely very friendly and welcoming, and with all the travelers and with the locals too. All the locals want you to stay at their place. They want to feed you. They want to show you their favorite spots to hang out, and they want you to like come with them to hang out everywhere.
That's so cool. And that's a good point too, with locals is like, I always tell people, like, if you're going somewhere, like you should ask locals. Like I always like go somewhere and like, I'll Google stuff and whatever it might be. But if there's an opportunity to ask somebody, like I'm asking someone because first of all, if somebody asks me in my hometown, like, "Hey, where should I go?" I know I have a whole list of where they should go. And I know that it's going to be good. It's going to be a good experience. But like, that might not be something that you might find on Google, like, or there might be a hole in the wall place or something. And I feel like you get such a better experience when you go through the locals and like get their perspective and their ideas.
Yeah.
So that's so cool that you got to experience that.
Yeah, and we even went to a wedding over there in Vietnam.
Cool.
The person we were staying with, he got married with his wife who was Vietnamese, and we spent a lot of time with her and them, and we were invited to the wedding, and they said I could bring my camera and film, so I kind of was like their wedding videographer.
That's
a little
so
bit at their wedding, and that was really sweet. And that was really cool, the Vietnamese wedding, because there was a lot of things that were the same, a lot of things that were different. Of course, the food was really good.
Yeah,
and
food is my favorite thing when traveling.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's restaurants in Boston, a lot of Asian restaurants in Boston, but it's just not the same.
Oh no, it's never this. The quality of food over there is just so different compared to the U.S. It's just different. It's on a whole nother playing field. It doesn't even count. So, how is the culture shock over there? Was that something that I know when I went to Hong Kong, I had a lot of culture shock. It was very different. So, like, I'm curious as to how you felt when traveling over there and how that culture shock was going to all these different countries in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I was very excited. So I don't think I even had really a shock, and people weren't surprised by me or my fiance, because we went to Chiang Mai, Thailand first is where we stayed. And that's a very backpacker or European hangout where people will work at schools over there. So it wasn't like people were surprised to see me. I was just one of the other regular, girls coming to visit Thailand. So there was no shock there. There was a lot of English around, pretty much all the Southeast Asian countries. Everyone spoke English. There were signs in English everywhere for all the travelers. So there wasn't really that much of like a shock. It was just more of, I was so excited to be there and meet everybody, and they were excited to show me all their stuff. I think the only time I might have had like a little culture shock was when we were going in places with strict dress codes because of religion, or like different attention being given if like I wasn't wearing the right thing or something. But one time I had to wear my fiance's clothes of a t-shirt and his capris, because I was like, I really don't have anything that covers my shoulders and knees right now, so I got to wear your clothes. My rest of my clothes are dirty. But I was able to adapt really, quickly, and I found a couple dresses that did cover the shoulders and the knees, and bring a shawl. Got to put a cardigan in your purse to whip it out if you go to a temple. And also it was like 100, very, very hot. So I was like, oh my goodness, we gotta wear this, and it's so hot.
No.
I think that was pretty much the only time that I was like, whoa, I can't wear like a tank top and shorts everywhere.
Everywhere, why not?
That's my favorite thing. So
yeah, I mean, when I was in Hong Kong, I remember, and it's funny because we're in COVID right now, right? But I remember like going through like the little ports and everything and like seeing them taking temperatures, and like
Oh,
if
wow.
you had a temperature, they would give you a mask, and like that was normal for them. That wasn't like, a shocker. So like when the whole mask thing came about here with COVID and everything, it really brought me back to like Hong
Oh,
Kong.
wow.
Wow, like that's so crazy. So that's kind of what like I got kind of culture shock, just like seeing that. Not that it was like bad or anything like that, just different from what we usually do here. And then, obviously the cuisine over there is a lot different. I don't know what I was eating half the
Yeah.
time, but it was good. But it was like I didn't know what I was eating, so it was funny. Those were some of the things, and just like kind of I guess how transportation is over there and everything, and the big cities. I feel like it's a lot different than our cities over here. But
Yeah. I mean, I went to Hong Kong. They didn't, I mean, I don't remember if we had our temperature taken, but I don't think we had a temperature because we weren't given a mask. But I was very surprised by how compact Hong Kong was. And there's like 15 buildings very squished together, like more than New
yeah,
York City, more than any other city. Everything was just kind of very industrial, it seemed like a futuristic type of kind of
it did.
landscape with how squished and mushed all the little buildings were. And we had the
It,
tiniest little hostel that was,
yeah,
yeah, the size of a bathroom or something.
we ended up staying in a hotel when we were there, but like literally the beds were like I would have to like I was like a board. I was like it was so small, and like going into the shower, it was like literally walk around in a circle, like very small. Like
Yeah.
everything was very compact. But that's Asia. I don't know. Is that Asia? Like, is that something that's all over? Or was that just in Hong Kong?
I think
Because
there's just, I mean, to that level, Hong Kong is the one that sticks out for me. But I mean, Tokyo and Singapore are also like very big cities and like the crowded city experience, but they're kind of more just like, they're a little more spaced out and everything's very clean and pristine, and um, lots of rules in both those places. And so I think Hong Kong is a little bit unique like that, with how close together everything is. But the Asian cities are definitely very, very cool. And I'm a big city girl. I will pick a city over the woods any day. That's why I'm in Boston now. So I really, yeah. Oh, no. Well,
I don't get it. It's funny because I love the outdoors, but I also, whenever I travel, I always make a point to go to the big cities. Like I'm from a small town, not necessarily. I mean, I live in Florida. I'm like off the beach, so it's like there's not necessarily woods around. But whenever I have a chance to go to the mountains, like that's what I'm doing. But I also like to go to big cities just to see like what's there. So it's funny that like you
but I love the beach too. That's like the two things. I'm either going to be at a beach or the fact that we lived in Da Nang, Vietnam, which is, we picked it because it was a city and a beach combined. And that's kind of like the only place like that in Vietnam, because the other cities are more in the center, so they're not really near the water. So we kind of wanted the best of both worlds. So
sounds like the best of both worlds. And and I always tend to make it to the bigger cities, but I also make a point to go to the smaller cities too.
yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of those bigger cities are going to be more like, and I don't know if this is per se in Europe or in Asia, but like I know in Europe, like a lot of those big cities, like they're almost trying to be like what the world thinks they should be. Like Paris was very touristy, it was just touristy is the word, so like going to those smaller cities really brings out like the culture of the place that you're at, and like seeing like what life is really like there. So I'm sure you experience that, like being over there and like being in those smaller cities that like maybe aren't as mainstream, right?
Yeah, we did. We pretty much tried to do a combination of the mountain, the sea, the small area, the rural small areas, the cities, and we kind of kept going. Did a little clockwork of visiting one after the other.
Nice.
And yeah, we have been to places that a lot of some of those places were kind of in betweens, that you had to go to there first before you could get to another island, or you had to stop on the way to the mountain or something. And that's where we did get to meet a lot of the locals, and tried different types of food that they were cooking in their kitchens and everything. And We did a
So
lot of homestays that were in the rural parts, and that was kind of a thing that was set up. So in Malaysia, we did that. We did a homestay that was meant to give money back to the family, and kind of a deal between the tourism board and them, so that they didn't have to plow it down and build a casino or something. They kind of had a local village, have people stay over there. And it was kind of symbiotic between those two.
that's cool. So how does one find that? Like, is that something like that you have to reach out to? Like, how do you get into that type of situation?
Well, that kind of situation, we researched beforehand. We also did a mixture of researching and also just going with the flow and going where people recommended us to go.
Yeah.
So we kind of, if you look up the smaller towns or unique experiences, you can find that stuff online too. And like there was another one that was called Mr. Rot's Secret Tour in Vietnam, and you kind of go and it starts off in the city of Dalat, but then he takes you into the inner countryside, and you see the village there, and then they make you food, and you like weave wedding scarves with the woman in the house and all this kind of stuff. And that was pretty cool. So that one we kind of found a lot of the times too, if you just land somewhere and you go into your hostel, then you just ask the hostel owner, okay, so where should we go? What's your favorite place? Where should we not go? What do you recommend? And sometimes they'll say, do our hostel tour. You're like, okay. But then they say, oh, also there's a couple other things that are, a little more unique and adventure-y. So you can find them anywhere.
No, absolutely. And I think that's why I really like hostels too, because they do give you that opportunity to be like, they usually have like a board or something like, oh, these are some things that you can do locally and whatever it might be, or recommendations. And then you can always ask the people there locally as well. So it's always a great little tool for that. But you brought up a good point about the online is like, I've had some people be like, well, how do you go to these places and how do you find all of these places? I'm like, the internet?
Yeah.
It's funny, like we have the internet at our fingertips right now, like more than we've ever had in all of like life. So like it's funny because back in the day, like it was so different to travel back then. Like you'd have to have a book, and then you'd have to be like, okay, like I'm going here and this is the map, like whatever it might be. But now you just whip out your phone and you're like, okay, where, like Google, where should I go? Like it's right there for you. So I think that did you find that very helpful for you over there as well? Like with just finding everything, you pretty much just looked on the internet? And
just like a combination of things, because we planned going on the plane with our friend, and then pretty much when we got to his area, then he showed us all the fun stuff to do. So we didn't really need to research for the first little part of our trip. But, and then we stayed with a friend, and then that friend and his wife, who was a local, showed us everything to do. And then after that, we kind of went as we, researched as we went along, a little bit of research online before we got there. And then once we got there, we asked everybody. And we even too just would kind of go to the different tour buildings. If they were all lined up, we'd go to each one and ask them, how much is your tour? How much is your tour? And we went down the whole street, and we were like, okay, the fifth one down at the cheapest price.
I like that. Did you do any of the free walking tour? I don't know if they have, I presume that they have them over there, but I used like the free walking tours and everything where you pretty much tip like whatever amount.
Yeah. We I have a couple videos of free walking tours. I have a free walking tour in Da Nang, and I have pretty much we saw a big area of Tokyo, the Asakaza area. And that kind of toured the whole temple and all over the place. And it was a huge, long, like 10-hour tour that was totally free. And,
10 hours?
I mean, I think it was from the morning till the evening time. It was before dark, but we like started early. I mean, maybe it was 6 hours, but it was run by this little old, like 70-year-old Japanese guy, and we were just wondering how could you walk? And he was way more fit than any of us. All of us were huffing and puffing. He's like, okay, now there's this, and now there's this. Yeah, and all of these. I know, we're like, and he's like, oh, thanks, guys. We're like, wow, how do you have so much energy? But
so funny.
if you get to any of the like a city, well, there's not probably going to be a free walking tour if it's a small rural town somewhere. But if it's just like a big city or a small city or anywhere where people go, then they probably have a walking tour. And if you just land, then you just ask.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really cool too is that you learn so much about the places that you're going to with those walking tours. Like you learn so much about the history, and I always love them. Like it's always the first thing that I look into when I get to a city, because I'm like, I didn't even care about really history much like in school or anything until I started traveling, and then I was like actually there, and it's like a whole different experience.
Yeah, we learned so much history that we never heard of before when we were traveling. For example, in Laos, they had this whole museum that was about the bombs that landed and never went off in Laos. And then you're from the Vietnamese-American War. And at first, when we got there, we were like, wait a minute, but Vietnam's over there and Laos over there. But since they're so close to each other, a lot of the bombs that came out of the plane went into Laos, even though there's no war going on in Laos. And then when it went off years later, and people lose limbs. And so this museum was dedicated to the different prosthetics and learning about that and all this kind of stuff. And it was very sad to see, but definitely very eye-opening because we never heard of any of this.
Yeah, and part of history.
Yeah, and in Cambodia, we went to a lot of museums about the Khmer Rouge War, or not Rouge, the Khmer War that was going on. It was actually fairly recently, not too far in history. So they had this whole tower filled with a bunch of skulls, and yeah, so that was pretty intense too. Those 2 days were like very, very wild. We're like, woohoo, yeah, we're going on a tour. And then we were like, oh my God, what did we just learn? This is so sad.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's crazy how much is like out there and how much history and how they preserve it and everything. I mean, I encountered so many different things too when I was traveling, but it blows your mind for sure.
Definitely a lot more interesting learning it there versus learning in a book.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why I like encourage travel so much. It's because you're going to learn so much more than you would ever in a book. Like we learn world history, we learn even American history, and like not many Americans can really rattle that off much. Like, you know, so it's like there's so much out there, even exploring our own country here, like, but just going internationally, it's incredible how big the world is. I think we think we're in such a big part of it. Like we act like our world is so big, but then when you actually go out there and travel, you're like, wow, I am small.
Yeah, and it was so eye-opening too to see how many people knew what was going on with America, American politics, American basically they knew everything that was all the American news, everything that was going on in America. They were asking us all about it. But we didn't, of course, I mean, Americans don't know anything about anyone else's politics, anyone else's news, anyone else. So I was like, oh, I wish I knew about, your country's politics as much as you know about ours, because you know more about ours than we do. They were asking us, and I was like, I don't know what's going on in America.
When I was traveling, I was like, I'm trying not to listen to that.
We're trying to get out of here. Like,
yeah, no, for sure. I feel the exact same way. But I was always impressed by that, because not like, especially same thing in Europe, like, and I'm sure it's same with those Asian countries, is not only did they know what was going on in their country and what was going on in America, but they knew about what was going on in the countries around them.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know Canadian news or even Mexican news. Like, we're not hearing that. Like, we're literally, our news is a whole nother thing. We don't need to go into that. But yeah, I thought that was a cool aspect too, is that like, they all know what's going on, and like they're very much in tune with what's going on over here. So So the friends that you made over there, I'm sure you made quite a few in 2 years, right? And have plethora of places to stay for free now for like the rest of your life. Have you been hearing anything over there about like how COVID has been? Like, cause you got back in 2019?
And late 2018, so almost 2019, but
okay.
Definitely I got back before COVID hit. So I have been hearing, because I'm pretty much connected online on Facebook, on Instagram with pretty much everyone I ever met on the trip that had an online, had an Instagram or had a Facebook. I instantly became friends with everybody to tag them in all the pictures that we were all taking together. So, I have been hearing stuff. I actually heard that Vietnam was doing pretty well with keeping the COVID under control, and so has Singapore, and all these kind of very smaller countries have really been doing a good job with kind of like, laying down the law and getting a handle on it, and making the cases go down. But then there's other places, like I saw, like in Tokyo, they do celebrate Halloween for like everyone visiting there, and you could like go to a big Halloween party in Shibuya Crossing, and I figured it wouldn't be that full this year, but I was checking out my friends' stories, and like it was crazy packed with hundreds of thousands of people, and I was like, oh no, don't do it. But
don't do it.
So they do have lockdown procedures and quarantine procedures for traveling over there, and some places are letting visitors come in. I heard that Vietnam did let tourists in, but then as soon as they let tourists in, the COVID cases went up. So then after like a little while, they shut that down real fast.
Well, and that's happened quite a few places. I feel like they opened up, and then as soon as like people got in there, it's like, what? How does it? It's crazy. We're in a different time now, and like travel's definitely changing some. So, is there anything that you see, like, for obviously the trip that you did for 2 years is going to, like, if you were to do something similar to that moving forward, like, do you think that there are going to be any major changes that people should like kind of be aware of, or like maybe any tips for people traveling out there? Like, I'll leave it at that.
I mean, well, the future of what is going to be open and when is still being determined, and probably for the next couple of years, places are kind of going to both. Some places are really down for it and excited about it. Like Mexico was like, all right, everyone come over, yay. But
I've got tequila. They no worries.
Thailand, I guess, is like letting people come over too. And there's a travel conference that's being held in Thailand coming up. So they must have worked out something, and they're feeling comfortable to let people come back in. I think it's going to be even more. They want people to come because the tourism industry in all these places are really going downhill. So they want everybody to come as fast as they can, and try to keep everyone safe, but also make money from people coming in.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it just depends on how COVID's all going to pan out with what the new travel rules are going to be. But I guess going forward, you're going to definitely have to research more thoroughly, because when Cedric and I went, we just kind of like landed and picked a hostel and then did our stuff from there. But you're going to have to do a little bit more than that now to see if places are still open, or do you need a mask when you go, and how long do you have to quarantine for? So with going forward, if you're doing that now, you really have to research every single place. But maybe in the future, it might go back to how it was, where you could just kind of appear, but not sure.
And I didn't even really think about it like that either, because I always suggest to people, like, have a schedule, have like a general schedule that you're going to be doing, but do not overbook yourself. And like, I try to have as open of a schedule as possible. But that might not really be as feasible. Like, if I think about it, like maybe if you're not going to somewhere as like a major country, like a major change in landscape like that, it might be a little harder to do that kind of unplanned trip.
And a lot of places are closing. So we're open might not be open anymore because they're shut down. So like, for example, the robot restaurant in Tokyo is like a big attraction. But they are temporarily closed right now, and there's all different information about whether they're going to reopen or not. But they pretty much only just temporarily closed. So there might be places that there's a lot of blog articles about, lots of videos about, just everywhere. And then you're going to have to pretty much see if all these places that people have been going to for years is now still open or is it closed?
Yeah, absolutely. Thing too. That is true. That is true. I think that a lot of the travel content that's out there might end up being out of date, I guess. So there's going to be like a whole, or not out of date, but like, you know, it's going to change. It's all going to change. It's going to be interesting to see how it all changes.
Yeah.
So do you think that there are any tips that you have for traveling over there that, like, from your experience that aren't going to be affected by COVID, I guess, per se?
Of course. I mean, for Southeast Asia in general, as I said before, there is a lot of English everywhere. You don't really need to. I mean, obviously, they appreciate you knowing the hello, the thank you, you're welcome, all this kind of stuff, and you should learn all that stuff before you go to be polite and courteous. But there are people. I mean, a lot of people there. They teach it in schools when the kids are young, and you know they'll tell you. But for that area in particular, I'm not saying everywhere else because with Europe is very different. They're all
very similar.
All right, similar. I thought they were like strict with. If you're in France, then you got to speak French or something.
No.
Ah, okay. Well,
same thing. They teach their. I mean, and depending on where you go, again, depends on where you go. But like, if you're somewhere, and if you're talking generally to someone who's younger, they're gonna know English. And again, just like you said, I think you said it perfectly. You just said like knowing those like hello, thank you, like you know, quick little things like showing an effort to speak their language really goes a long way, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Even just knowing how to say, do you speak English in their language? Like, is a big thing.
Let's see. Some other tips for that's transferable. I would say well, I mean, you have to research the visas and stuff before you go to each places because because they all have different things. And we kind of had to just get the visas as we went along. But for living in Vietnam, there was a thing back then where you would only have a 3-month visa. So, but to kind of, I don't know what the word would be, but you had to do a visa run where you just go out real quick and then come back in. And then the visa's all renewed for another 3 months.
Oh, like you literally just like leave for a second and come back.
And that's how I went to Hong Kong because that was like a one flight away. Da Nang to Hong Kong was a direct flight, and we just stayed there for a week and then came back, and then we had 3 more months on our visa. So, being specific with that, also with Southeast Asia, particularly, there is a trend to get around on motorbikes. And I always say this if ever I'm interviewed, but you got to be really careful on those things because you don't need a license. You can just hop on a motorbike whenever you want, and they're very inexpensive. And it is a good way to travel. And you can go, you can go far and wide. You have the bike for as long as you want. You have to bring it back and everything. But a lot of people would get drunk at the bar and then drive the motorbikes, and that would be very dangerous. And we have met a couple people who got really hurt or had really close calls or something. And I had a couple falls. I wasn't drunk, but I went over sand or something and skidded and scraped up my arm. But I had, protective, I was had long sleeves and longer pants and the helmet, and I was fine. But it's scary because you can go on the highway and stuff with the motorbikes, and that's what everybody does. So you got, I don't know. So after I had just 2 falls, then once I slipped in the rain, in the middle of the road.
So is that the main form of transportation that people use then? Just those motorbikes, or is that what?
Yeah, pretty much. In Southeast Asia, if you're in a country, you'll be on a motorbike, but obviously if you have to go to another country, you take a plane.
Oh yeah.
And then there's night buses and there's boats. A lot of ways you can get from country to country is on different boat rides and buses. But for every day, there's not really. Some places do have the Grab, which is the Southeast Asian version of Uber. It's a funny name because it's Grab, I'm going to open the Grab app and someone's going to grab me. Yeah,
no, that's perfect.
Yeah. So we did get around with that a lot too after we were all right, that's enough of the motorbikes because we don't want to get seriously hurt our friends, someone like broke her pinky, and like somebody like, you know, asked us if we wanted a ride from him on the way home from the bar, and we saw that he was drinking, so we were like, no, thank you. And then he like fell and like had to go to the hospital, so we were like, oh, we got out of that one. So
yeah,
that's another thing, is people will be like, yeah, it's totally fun, and oh, you're a baby if you're not riding a motorbike or something. But there's other ways to get around, and you don't have to.
I think common sense is a big thing when traveling, because a lot of people say, like, oh, you know, just like the scare factors really get to them. But it's like, listen, if you have common sense, if something looks or seems sketchy or dangerous, don't do it. Like, would you go down like a really sketchy alley, like just for fun? Like, no, like just, you know, don't do silly things, and just be cognizant of like what's going on in your surroundings. And I think that you're pretty good. I mean, at least in my experience, I don't know if you would agree with that, but
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the rules that would apply for just traveling anywhere around your own country, of whatever country you're from. Yeah, be aware, have extra money, you know, don't. Oh, another thing too with the motorbikes is that if you were a woman, and a lot of girls would like have the purse over their shoulders and riding, then there was a thing where people were riding on motorbikes and like grabbing the purses off the shoulders and like driving away.
Oh, wow.
So that's another thing too. But
so having like those money pouches, then the ones that go to your body, is probably best then.
Yeah, and we did do the backpack thing.
Yeah.
They were easier than the suitcases for the traveling for a longer period, because sometimes you'd have to take it off and put it in a very skinny part of a bus, or it would have to, a lot of times it'd have to be kind of thrown around. And if you're going to have a suitcase with wheels, that's just kind of, if you're on a boat, that's going to go all over the place. So, and not as easy to carry around. So if you're doing a longer trip, the bigger backpacking backpacks of 45 liters or 50 liters or something, those are better than
I know, I completely agree. Like, it's funny, especially when you're taking those long trips. Like, I've had some friends who go and like, I'm like, hey, borrow my backpack. Like, I know that you're not like a backpacker or anything like that, but I swear it's like the way to go. And like, I like pretty much forced her into doing it, and she was like so thankful that I did. She was like, oh my gosh, like my friend had, like her other friend had a duffel bag, and like it just was not, not good for convenience. So I think that's a really good tip, just utilizing the backpacks and everything like that. So that was some great advice. How do you see like where's your next trip? Let's go there. Where's your next trip, if like whenever COVID is like not an issue or whatever it might be? What's your next destination that you really want to take?
Oh, let's see. Well, I am supposed to have a wedding coming up in May, but with all this stuff going on, we don't even know what's going to be happening. But so our next trip will probably be a honeymoon. So I've always wanted to go to Hawaii for a honeymoon for some reason. That's like what I always wanted to do when I was a little kid. So we might be going. Might try to go to Hawaii or something.
When do you guys get married?
In May of this year.
That's right.
Yeah, and we were gonna get married in April, of last year, but we we like rescheduled everything for a new date in May. So
was it supposed to be like local to where you are, or
local to where our families are?
Wedding.
I wish, but we'll probably get married here and then have a honeymoon elsewhere. Would probably be our next trip. But
nice. I didn't know if you were gonna be like, we're getting married in Thailand.
Everyone thought we were gonna like get married or get engaged over there too. They were like, oh, I'm sure he'll ask, but he ended up asking when we came back home.
Whatever works. I guess it all gets done at the end of the day.
Where's your next trip gonna be?
If there is like without restrictions and everything, I really want to go to Iceland.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've
Iceland
heard
is
that's a
high
pricey
on the
one.
list.
Beware,
Yeah,
I
it
heard
is.
that's
I want to see the
in the
Northern
May.
Lights so bad.
Oh,
I need to. Like, and I was going to go in December, but then like I wasn't able to. And then I had opted instead for a trip in April that obviously didn't happen to Budapest. So I was supposed to
oh,
go to Budapest in April and then COVID. So that didn't happen.
oh, another place I might go. My friends, they were
Mhm.
gonna get married and have an Indian wedding in India. And
Ooh.
I was so excited for that, but then COVID hit. So, but they might do it in the future. They had a
Okay.
wedding in America that we went to before COVID happened, and then this was going to be like the next. They were going to do two. But yeah, so
Oh.
that would also be on the list if they end up having that wedding in India. Then I'm going
And
to be over there.
was India on your list, or would that be a new country for
No,
you?
that would be a new place.
Mm.
And in Malaysia, there's a huge Indian influence with food and religion and culture and everything. And because
Yeah.
Malaysia is kind of like a mixture, and so is Singapore, of a bunch of different cultures of China and India and all these influences. So I got a lot of Indian food and Indian culture from Malaysia. So that's why I'd be excited to like go to India and see the real thing. And I made a lot of friends online who are from India, and they're like, "Come over."
I
And I'm
know.
like, I want to. I'm waiting.
Almost there. Maybe someday. That's awesome. So, you talked about Malaysia, and I know you got some stuff coming up. So tell us what you've got coming up on your channel, which if you guys haven't checked out her channel already, make sure you go and subscribe to her channel, Deanna Troy Travels. So that's your little intro. Tell people how they can get in contact with you, and where they can find you.
Yes, well, thank you. Yeah, as I said, I love this little button over there before. But yes, so in January 2021, I am releasing a new website and a new series of Malaysia. And in my Malaysia series, starting January 1st of 2021, I have videos coming up of Kuala Lumpur, of Penang, Malaysia, of Bako National Parks and homestays, and all this kind of stuff. So with all my videos, I like to do a mixture of the touristy attractions and also the hidden secret gems and the things I learned from the locals. And that's kind of what I did too in my Vietnam series and my Tokyo series. I always do like a name before, so I call the Tokyo Totally Tokyo. I call my Vietnam series Vibrant Vietnam. So I almost just said totally. So yeah, so with all my videos, I try to like show a little bit of all the different types of travel, all the different types of scenery, city, beach, landscapes, the local experience, the travel experience. So that's kind of what I do on my channel, and I try to kind of give an eye to the viewer of what the culture is like and what the people are like, and show that travel isn't as scary as people make it out to be, or the movies and the media make it out to be. And Americans do have a lot of leeway with visa. The American visa can pretty much go anywhere, which I did learn that like in Southeast Asian countries, they can't go to other Southeast Asian countries because their visa like is not qualified, and they have to go through a bunch of things to like be able to travel elsewhere. So it is lucky to have an American visa and to be able to go different places without too much of a hassle.
So explain that a little bit further, because I feel like people do not understand the difference between having a passport and getting a visa.
Oh yeah, sorry, I might have misspoke, but for my friend in Vietnam, when she got married, as I told you, I went to her wedding. They do eventually want to move to England, but and she has a Vietnamese passport. So yeah, I'm not sure whether it's the visa or the passport, but she has to have a job for a certain amount of period. She has to show the bank account. She has to show this, this, and this. She has to go to Class B or Class C countries first. This is what the Vietnam rules require if you're a citizen, I guess. Like she has to take the smaller trips within the continent before she's allowed to go other places too. So, and that's something that a lot of people over there, if they can't just grab, pick up and go. They have to like work towards and show proof of to get other places that's, not in Southeast Asia. So
Interesting. Wow.
yeah, that was something I learned over there. I was like, what do you mean? You just go online and get
What do
your
you
visa.
mean? Just get to the plane and you go.
They're like, no.
So, but I guess in my question too, because I've never had to get a visa. Hong Kong, you're not required to get a visa going there. But when going to some of these other places for long periods of time, what's the process of like getting a visa? Is that something quick for people to get, or is that like how much does that usually cost? I'm sure there's a cost to it.
Yeah, it's actually, because it depends on where you're flying in from.
Okay.
So it's cheaper if you're just within still talking about Southeast Asia. If you're going from Laos to Vietnam, then the visa will be from, your entry in Laos to your entry in Vietnam, and you write down your American passport. And it's a little cheaper than if you're coming in from America, like straight to Laos. I don't know the exact prices off the top of my head, and they're always changing too. Yeah, it's very easy if, like, even we've done it before on one of these boat rides or these buses. They'll take you, and once you cross the border, everyone gets out, everyone gets their visa cards, everyone fills them out, and then you keep going. And once you get into the place, then you have to go into the government building, and they just do a couple stamps, and then you pay, and then you're good to go. So sometimes you can do it right when you get to the place too, and they will help you do that.
It's not a long process then. It's not like an application process or anything.
No, I mean, some countries, yes. I don't know which ones off the top of my head, but usually you'll get the visas pretty fast. And in Southeast Asia, you just cross over and then you can get it. So
was going to, because Thailand was your first stop, right?
Yes.
So going to Thailand from America,
Mm-hmm.
was that like that was the most expensive one? Like, was that something that you had to wait for?
I think that was an online application, and then a 2-week waiting period, and it had to be approved and everything. So I think that one did take a little bit longer. But and then also too, it depends on what kind of visa you're getting. If you're getting the visa to live there for a year or something, that's more intensive and more of a wait. Versus if you're getting a visitor's visa, if it's just for a month, then they'll just give it to you sometimes when you pay. So it depends on too the amount of time you want to stay at a place, and they have different visas for the length of time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've cleared up some things for people. I think you gave some amazing tips. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and how Southeast Asia was for you. I know I learned some things, so that's really cool. And I love your channel, and I'm glad that we were able to meet. It's crazy how you get to meet people on the internet nowadays, and just get to connect and share stories. So it's really awesome. I really appreciate coming on and sharing everything that you had to share. Do you have any last minute things to share with everyone?
Let's see. My YouTube channel, you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and my website is deannatroytravels.com. And that's, it's already spelled on the screen, but Deanna Troy, Troy Travels. And that's on all social platforms. So, and I'm on TikTok too. I just saw you were on TikTok, so I friended you. Anywhere that there's a social platform, you can find me. All my links are in the description. If you have any other questions about Southeast Asia or want to learn more about Vietnam and Tokyo travel, you can come over to my channel, my Instagram. And nice to meet you, everybody. Thank you so much, Lucie, for having me. I love your channel too, and I love this podcast you're doing with all these new travel friends you're making. And I'm glad to be in your little club now of your travel Tuesday club.
I did a little club. I love it. Well, I do have one last question that I ask everyone who comes on my channel. And I always end the show with this. So, how has travel changed and impacted you?
Oh, a big one. A big one. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've something I've said before to friends of mine and everything is that I feel, since it was 2 years, which is kind of a long time, but also not really a long time. But I kind of feel like we were in a little time capsule, and we just like age so much with our mentality and maturity and learning so much about the world. And also any preconceived notions we had about pretty much anything was flown out the window. And we both became so much more go with the flow, carpe diem, just kind of taking opportunities more and like not really being scared of anything that we want to try. So that's kind of how traveling impacted us. And that's what I hope that traveling can do for others. And yeah, that's why I post the things I do, and I try to help people break out of their own comfort zones and take the leap, whether it be the trip or the new job or something else like that. So
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Everybody always has a slight different description of it, but it's all like along the same core basics. And I just love hearing how people describe it and how it's changed their life. So I think you worded it pretty great. We have a very similar vision in how we are putting out our content and what we want from people, want people to experience. So I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Deanna. If you guys are watching, thank you for joining us on this Travel Tip Tuesday. I do go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can always find me on my channel. You can follow me on Instagram at The Traveling Lucie, as well as you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Traveling Lucie, if you're not already subscribed. I'd love to see you there. And yeah, if you ever have any questions, you can always ask me, and you can always leave a comment, and please reach out to Deanna with any of your questions as well. But it's always great to have you guys on here, and make sure you guys stay tuned because I have those new guests coming up, and I also have Vlogmas coming up in December that I'm really excited about. So stay tuned for more information on that, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you, Deanna.
Bye. Thank you. Nice to meet all of you guys.